I don't have a cooking background, but I found that you don't have to go to culinary school to learn how to cook a new particular cuisine. I mean, I feel like we had the best teachers in the world, people who've been making it their whole life in Georgia. We're really fortunate to have that experience and feel really fortunate to be able to give this food to other people here who've never had it and just extend the experience that we had when we were in Georgia. I was accidentally introduced to Georgian food, really. My wife and I volunteered for the Peace Corps back in 2010. We were assigned to the Republic of Georgia. So we went over not knowing anything about the country, and very shortly after getting there, started to really like some of the food. I remember thinking, why can't we get this in the States? Why have I never had this before? Georgia sits at the crossroads between Europe and Asia, and has kind of been conquered by everybody throughout history. Mongols and Turks and Persians, Russians left their mark, but at the same time, Georgia still has a really strong, unique culinary identity. And the fact that it's relatively unknown outside of that part of the world was just amazing to me and my wife. And as we finished our Peace Corps service, we were like, we're gonna miss this food so much. And not just the food, but the culture of hospitality around the food. And so we thought, well, what if there's a way that we can recreate that here in the States? And so we came back, and within 6 months, we opened Kargi Gogo as a food cart downtown Portland. Early on in our Peace Corps experience, we had Khachapuri, the Georgian cheese bread. Khachapuri, it is a staple of Georgian cuisine. Some say it's the national dish of Georgia. If the Georgians had settled in America before the Italians, we would all be eating Khachapuri and not pizza. It's just so simple and so delicious. Acharuli Khachapuri is the most common kind of Khachapuri that you'll get in Georgia. It's served at virtually every event. It's on every table. Everybody in every home makes it. It's a round flatbread that's stuffed with the cheese, and at the end gets brushed with butter and sliced up. For as simple as it is, it's amazing. In Georgia, it is the most common kind of Khachapuri that you'll eat. Acharuli Khachapuri is probably the most famous Georgian cheese bread outside of Georgia. This type of Khachapuri comes from the western part of the country, on the Black Sea coast. It's shaped like a boat, open-faced with a big cauldron of cheese in the middle, and then topped with an over-easy egg and a pat of butter. And so you mix that all together and it becomes a really kind of cheesy, eggy fondue. It's super decadent and delicious. Here in America, if you see a Khachapuri on Instagram or online somewhere, chances are 9 out of 10 times it's gonna be this, because it looks amazing. Georgian dumplings, khinkali, big juicy dumplings. I remember going to these feasts in Georgia, which are called supras. And there's multiple courses and plates stacked on plates stacked on plates. And they stretch on for hours and hours. And they can have these supras for weddings, for birthdays, but also just because it's nice weather. So at these events, khinkali is one of the stars of the show. So I remember going to these super dinners and giant plates of dozens of dumplings coming out. And guys would reach for these dumplings and just eat them and kind of drink out the juice. I'd never really seen anything like that before. It's not as soupy as a soup dumpling, but it's definitely juicy. When it cooks, the fat that's in the meat renders and then mixes with the water that's in the mix as well, and that creates a sort of a broth inside there. We always tell people to pick it up by the handle and take a bite and kind of drink out the juice as you go. Because if you cut into it, juice spills all over the plate and then you've missed out on half of the fun of eating the dumpling. Kubdari is a round bread that's stuffed with meat, so it's technically maybe a kind of Khachapuri, but there's no cheese in it. It's just meat, onions, and spices. So I'd had this dish several times in the town where we lived and in the capital. It was okay. It was nothing that special. But the dish hails from the high mountains of Swaneti in Georgia. And one time we went to Swaneti and then stopped at a little roadside diner on the way there. And our driver, he made us stop. He was like, we have to go here for this kubdari. And this dish was unlike any other kubdari that I'd had. I mean, the meat was big and chunky and it was just perfectly seasoned. And the fat that was in the meat, it kind of soaked into the bread as it cooked. And I mean, it's just this delicious, decadent dish that didn't even resemble the other kubdaris that I'd had. And that's when I was like, I want to learn how to make that because it's just amazing. Over the course of the next few days there in Swaneti, we had the chance to learn how to make this dish. People in Georgia are very open and proud of their food. And the kubdari and so much of what we learned there is because of the generosity of the Georgian people. And it's always been important to us with all the dishes to be really good stewards of the things that they are so proud of. And we always want to be respectful to them. And so with this kubdari recipe in particular, I'm trying to get it as close as possible to what we learned up there in the mountains. To me, it tastes really close. We didn't know what we were getting into when we went over there. We didn't know anything about Georgia at all. But it ended up being such a perfect fit on so many different levels. My wife and I just want Georgia to continue to be a part of our lives, and that's why doing this restaurant is so much fun, because it gives us a reason to stay connected to Georgia. Not like we need a reason, not like we needed a restaurant to go back and spend time with people, but this just gives us a deeper connection.